Hosting a holiday party can be stressful, and hey, no one knows that better than Chef Bill Yasis. The former executive pastry chef at the White House is in Ottawa this week designing the menu for the U.S. Ambassador's holiday party. He joins us this morning from the Ambassador's residence, and he's with Chef Dino Carrick, the head chef for the U.S. Ambassador's residence. Gentlemen, so good to have you with us. How are you?
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, Chef Dino, you are sharing your kitchen this morning with Chef Yasis. Tell us, Chef Yasis, what you're doing there.
Well, we've designed a special menu for the holiday reception here that Ambassador and Mrs. Heyman are throwing tomorrow night. So Dino and I have been cooking up a storm and having a great time here doing it. We want to show you our pumpkin pie recipe today.
Okay, so I hear that U.S. President Obama calls you the crust master. So if you're the crust master, that means that you know what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to this pumpkin pie. And are you going to give us a few secrets about the crust and what you use?
Sure will, yeah. One of the things is to cut the butter small so that as it expands in the heat of the oven, it adds flakiness, and we sort of do a fold onto the dough after we mix it, which we'll show you in a little bit, to add another layer of flakiness to it.
How about you show us now? How about you get started? And if you can do that,
sounds good. Let's go.
You go, and I'll continue asking you some questions, because you were involved with the First Lady's Healthy Eating Initiative, and I want to know, as a pastry chef, how that influenced your cooking.
Well, I think it's important that pastry chefs weigh in on this subject, because we don't want people to think that healthy cooking necessarily means depriving us of all pleasure. So there still can be desserts. It's just in moderation and with good ingredients, which we're going to use today, that we're able to come up with recipes that are delicious and healthful at the same time.
And so
in this case,
you're making the crust right now, Chef.
Go ahead. Yes, we are. So as you can see, there's a lot of butter. But the point is that when we use good ingredients with good techniques, you're sort of satisfied with less. So a smaller portion of a dessert can be very satisfying when it's well made.
And, you know, it's an interesting...
We've also added a little...
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you, I was just saying it's an interesting point that you make, because oftentimes people will think that they're shortchanging, you know, taste when it comes to something that's lower calorie.
Exactly, and that doesn't have to be the way it is. We find replacements for some of the things which we may consider less than healthy by upping the ante in other ways. For example, in this recipe, we're going to use a kabocha squash instead of the typical pumpkin. It has a lot of flavor, a lot of nutrition, and we've removed the dairy by adding a cashew milk instead. So to compensate for what may be missed, we add a lot of different spices to this recipe.
Okay, so we're going to follow along now as you make this for us. You're working on the crust. I love that the two of you are together. This is great teamwork. And just kind of tell us what's happening now.
We're having good fun. So very important as part of the sort of flakiness of the dough is not to overmix it, because when we mix the dough, the gluten strands become more and more elastic. And we don't want that. The elastic part is what makes dough tough. So as you saw, Dino just barely mixed this together, just a few pulses in the food processor. And you don't have to use a food processor. You can do it in a bowl as well, just by hand. But you can see that this dough has already come together nicely. Now, it's a little bit too soft because it's warm for us to use right away. But we have one that's already chilled. Oh, thank you. There, we'll wrap that up. We have one, the same recipe that's already chilled. This recipe is on your website, by the way.
Thank you for that.
And so this is chilled, and you can see that it's rolling out pretty easily. And it's also, one thing that's important is it's not retracting. So we notice that with doughs that are overworked, that they tend to get very elastic, and we're trying to avoid that. Now, there will be some elasticity. That's natural. You want that, because otherwise it wouldn't hold together.
So, Chef, I want to just quickly interject here as you continue to do this. Can I ask you what the U.S. President's fave dessert is?
Well, it happens to be pie in all its forms. I think the first thing he ever said to me was, "Stop making pies," because we, of course, you know, having a new boss, you want to impress him, and so we were like sending a pie up to the residents every night.
Wow.
And he said, you know, I don't want to look like Robert Taft, who was the Americans' heaviest president. And so he said, just please stop making them every day. Just make them on the weekends.
Just on the weekend.
So that's what we did.
And what about Mrs. Obama?
She, likewise, and the whole family, they really like those classic American desserts, pies, cobblers. Once in a while, a red velvet cake, I guess, would come out of our kitchen. But the classics were usually what we stuck to.
And we can see why. Listen,
So
Chef Yasis, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, now, at this point, one of the things that people don't like about pie making, I think, is they find it difficult because it sticks to the counter. So we have a little bit of extra flour here, as you see, and we put that on the counter so it doesn't stick. And one thing to notice is that as you roll it out, it could be sticking without you knowing it. So it's important to flip the dough very frequently.
Okay, you know what? We've got to let you go, although these tips are just amazing. Chef Dino, Chef Yasis, wonderful to have you both with us. And thank you so much for letting us get a peek inside the residence there. You'll be, of course, cooking and doing your thing for the U.S. Ambassador Heyman's and his wife Vicky's party. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You'll find the recipe for the chef's delicious pumpkin pie on our website.